Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll continue on this parks discussion, and I appreciate what Senator King from Maine was talking about in terms of enhancing some of the opportunities to get some more money into the parks to help with some of the clear issues you've identified in your budget. I want to back up, though, and talk a little about the Centennial Challenge and some of the initiatives there. As you know, Madam Secretary, I've been working with you on this, and we've talked a lot about how in 2016, 103rd anniversary of the park, we could do some exciting things to try to generate more interest in the parks and also to deal with some of the budget challenges. In 2007, when I was at the Office of Management Budget, we launched this Centennial Challenge, we called it, where you get the private sector more engaged with the parks. And I think your former company was part of that. It seems to make so much sense to me. It's basically you provide a federal match to be able to leverage private sector dollars. We had hoped to raise $100 million per year over a 10-year period, substantial funding that would go toward some of these maintenance backlogs and other issues. That was never realized, never passed Congress. And I'm pleased to see in your budget that you all are again proposing something like this. I guess my question to you is if you could explain briefly to the group here why you think this mandatory federal funding is important to incentivize non-federal partners, and maybe you can include some of your experience in the private sector.
Thanks, Senator Portman, and thanks for your commitment to the national parks. I did actually work with my predecessor, Secretary Kempthorne, on this, trying to encourage Congress to pass the Centennial Act. The National Park Service is arguably the most recognized and valued brand within the federal government, and certainly a place where people are very, very interested in providing support. And research has shown that there is a tremendous interest in private philanthropy. We also know, and I've done a lot of fundraising myself, that a match is a great incentive to get people to give sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 times the amount, showing that we're putting our money up and individuals will do so too. So the budget has in the discretionary part $50 million for a match and an additional $100 million in the mandatory proposal. We are confident that with a match we can multiply that several times over. I think that there are parts of the Park Service where people will want to give private philanthropy, and other areas, like some of the deferred maintenance, which are probably going to be less conducive to that. So our budget focuses our resources on those that are less accessible to fundraising, like the deferred maintenance, and would concentrate those matching funds on areas like Gettysburg would be a good example where private philanthropists have stepped up to help, and we've seen that here in Washington, D.C. as well.
Well, I think it's a really exciting opportunity. I think on a bipartisan basis, this committee would be very interested in working with you on that. I am very concerned about the backlog and some of the deferred maintenance you talk about. It's a real problem at many of the parks, including Cuyahoga National Park and Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio, which is, by the way, one of the top 10 visited parks in the country, and we're very proud of that. My question to you is, how do you square this backlog and the problems we have with just funding what we have with the fact that you all continue to promote, more workload for the National Park Service by expanding the areas of responsibility and proposing more stewardship?
Yeah. Well, this budget really has a proposal that over 10 years would clear up the maintenance backlog on the facilities on our highest priority assets, those that are going to see the most visitors, those that are in the most difficult condition. For example, the Mini Glaciers Hotel, which is a very popular attraction in Glacier National Park, still has knob and tube wiring, which is actually not safe. So we have in this budget a proposal to make progress over 10 years on cleaning all that up. About half of our backlog is in roads. We require Department of Transportation funding for that. The other half, this will address the highest priority assets and give us a good shot in that centennial year of the highest of the high priorities and dealing with them. So it is a path forward because we recognize that we have not kept up. The budget has not kept up with the needs.
I would say also the transportation budget, which is not under your aegis, but does not provide adequate funding for the roads and the bridges and the other infrastructure you all need, because a lot of it is transportation infrastructure. I hope that you pushed for that. And,
we do.
And that it was those efficiency people at OMB that told you no, but you got to continue to push for that, and I'm very disappointed in the transportation budget not having more. Let me just ask you a question. Let's say that somebody in Cleveland, Ohio wants to make a contribution to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park to improve a facility, let's say to add a new roof to a building, and there are situations like that right now at all of our parks. How can they do that? Under the current Centennial Challenge, can they assure that the money that they give to the park is going to go to fix that roof?
Yes, we can do that. And we do it through the National Park Foundation, or if the Cuyahoga Valley has its own Friends group, they could go through that mechanism as well.
They do have a great Friends group, one of the best in the country. In fact, the woman in charge of it is head of the national group, it has been. But how can they do it through the Park Service?
I'm not exactly sure of the mechanics.
Yeah, I don't
but
think they can.
You don't think so? Okay, I'll look into that.
I think that's something that we should work on as part of this Centennial. I'm already over time, but I would like to issue, if I could, some questions for the record with regard to the permitting process. I think this is an area where we have a great opportunity to do some work on a bipartisan basis. Again, Senator King and I and others have introduced legislation in this. And let me just put a concern on the table, and that is how we're dealing with this issue of the northern long-eared bat, and in particular, your folks at U.S. Fish and Wildlife who are proposing to list the bat as endangered, and what that would mean for commercial activity. That has nothing to do with the issues with the bat. So we'd like to work with you on that, but I'm very concerned about it.
May I answer that just very briefly? It looks like the likelihood is a threatened listing, and the Fish and Wildlife Service has proposed a very broad sweeping 4D rule, which would enable a lot of the same kind of economic activities to go forward if that's the case. So that's where we are with it. We recognize white-nose syndrome is the biggest issue.
White-nose syndrome is the issue. It's not development or commercial activity.
Right.
And by the way, it's not broad enough to encompass what people care about a lot in eastern Ohio, which is oil and gas development, as well as some other commercial activity. So we need to broaden that.
Okay. Thank you.